What happens when the wild stops fearing us? It was a quiet winter afternoon in Colorado when 18-year-old Scott Lancaster laced up his borrowed sneakers and stepped outside for a run. He was smiling, carefree, completely unaware that within the hour he'd become the first person in Colorado history to be killed by a mountain lion. But this wasn't some freak accident. It was the horrifying climax of a pattern no one wanted to admit was happening. A story filled with ignored warnings, escalating behavior, and a predator that had slowly crept closer and closer until it stepped out of the shadows and everything changed. Mountain lions, or cougars, pumas, panthers, catamounts, have as many names as they have hiding places. With the largest range of any land mammal in the Americas, they roam from the snowy forests of Canada to the steamy jungles of South America. But despite their reach, they remain unseen. In fact, they're nicknamed the ghost cats for good reason. They hunt silently, move like shadows, and disappear before you even know they were there. For centuries, these predators avoided us, and we in turn believed we had tamed the wilderness, but that illusion didn't last. In early American history, mountain lions were considered dangerous pests. They were hunted, trapped, poisoned, and burned out of their dens. By the 1900s, bounties were offered for dead cougars in dozens of states, sometimes just for a paw or a tail as proof. Some areas even hired full-time government hunters. It wasn't about balance, it was eradication. And for a while, it worked. Lions vanished from entire regions. But something unexpected happened when the apex predators disappeared. The prey took over. Deer populations exploded, devouring vegetation, stripping forests, and triggering ecological collapse. The solution had created a new problem. That's when the pendulum began to swing back. By the 1960s, attitudes toward wildlife started shifting. Fueled by environmental awareness and books like Silent Spring, Americans began seeing predators not as monsters, but as part of a fragile ecosystem. Bounties ended, laws changed, conservation efforts took root. Mountain lions, once nearly extinct in many places, began creeping back into the landscapes they once ruled. But they didn't return to the same wilderness. They came back to suburbs, parks, and small towns. And no place symbolized that collision better than Boulder, Colorado. Nestled near the Rocky Mountains, Boulder had become a haven for wildlife lovers. The city had set aside greenbelts and open spaces to preserve natural beauty. Residents planted native vegetation. They welcomed deer into their neighborhoods, often literally. Some even left out food and salt licks to attract them. But where deer go, predators follow. By the late 80s, Boulder was overflowing with deer, and mountain lions weren't far behind. What started as rare sightings quickly turned into something much more unsettling. People began seeing lions in broad daylight, stalking through backyards, lounging on patios, watching children through windows. And worst of all, they weren't afraid. In 1988, a man named Bill C.R. sat alone in his house in a Boulder Canyon when he heard knocking, not at the door, but on it. Not a visitor, not a delivery, just heavy, rhythmic thuds. When he peeked outside, his heart stopped. 4 mountain lions stood on his porch, not one. 4. One appeared injured, with an old trap clamped to her leg. They weren't just passing through, they were playing, rolling, stretching, lounging like house cats. Bill had lived there 20 years. He'd never seen even one mountain lion before. Now there were 4 at his door. He called wildlife officials. Their response? Don't worry, they're probably just moving through. They weren't. Soon, the neighborhood's cats started vanishing. Then dogs. First a small poodle, then a terrier. Then, in a terrifying escalation, a Doberman, 85 pounds, was dragged off its porch in seconds. The attacks were calculated. Some pets were found with surgical precision in their wounds. Others simply disappeared. In one case, a woman named Pawn Gebhardt was watching deer graze outside when a low growl shattered the quiet. Just feet from her home, a lion crouched under a tree, eyes locked on her. That same lion returned days later. This time, standing on her porch, staring through the glass. Pawn reported it. The response? A wildlife manager told her bluntly, "What do you want me to do?" As sightings escalated, two local wildlife experts, Jim Halfpenny and Michael Sanders, began compiling data. They tracked sightings, collected reports, and pleaded with officials to let them tag and monitor the lions. They were denied, again and again. One of the reasons? Liability. Officials feared that if they tagged a lion, and that lion hurt someone, the state would be sued. So instead, they did nothing. Meanwhile, the lions kept coming. Then came the incident that should have changed everything. Linda Walters, a 28-year-old medical student, was jogging one evening when she saw something strange on the trail ahead. A mountain lion, 15 feet away, staring directly at her. She raised her arms, shouted, threw rocks, but the lion didn't flinch. Then a second lion emerged from the bushes. Linda bolted up a tree, clawing her way up as one of the lions tried to follow. It clawed at her legs, nearly dragging her down, but she kicked again and again until it lost interest. The two cats circled for 30 agonizing minutes before disappearing into the trees. Linda survived, but officials called it an encounter, not an attack. To the public, it felt like denial. On January 15, 1991, Scott Lancaster, a high school senior in Idaho Springs, took off on a midday run during a free period. He wasn't supposed to be gone long, but when his friends didn't see him loop back around the school, they started to worry. Hours passed, then days. Search teams scoured the surrounding forests. On the third day, they found his body, partially buried beneath moss and twigs, chest torn open. Nearby, a mountain lion crouched silently, watching from just 15 feet away. The lion was shot. Inside its stomach were pieces of Scott's clothing, and Scott himself. He was the first person in Colorado history to be killed by a mountain lion. Suddenly, all the warnings that had been dismissed didn't seem so harmless anymore. The porch sightings, the missing pets, the jogger chased into a tree. It had all led to this. Public outrage exploded. The state reclassified Linda Walters' incident as an attack. Wildlife officers started using non-lethal methods to scare lions away. Carcasses left near homes were removed. Radio collars were finally approved. Too late for Scott. But maybe not for the next person. The truth is, mountain lion attacks on humans are still incredibly rare. Statistically, you're more likely to be struck by lightning than attacked by a cougar, but rarity doesn't mean impossibility. What happened in Boulder wasn't just a tragic one-off. It was the result of a predator adapting to a world where humans had become too comfortable, too trusting, too close. These cats didn't forget how to hunt. We forgot we could be prey. Scott Lancaster's death was horrifying, but it forced a reckoning. Wildlife officials across the country began reevaluating how they handled large predators. Communities started understanding that living with nature didn't just mean birdwatching and hiking trails. It meant recognizing that some parts of nature come with teeth. And they don't knock before coming in. Mountain lions are still out there, silent, hidden, watching. They don't want to hurt us. But when food is scarce, when boundaries blur, when they lose their fear, sometimes they do.